The transport shuttle touched down on Platform 7 of the Galactic Combat Arena, with a metallic thud that rattled through Lee Minji's bones. She pressed her face against the small window, watching as the massive structure came into view. The arena was bigger than any city she had seen on New Busan. Towers of metal and glass stretched toward the artificial sky, and everywhere she looked, aliens moved with purpose and power. Minji felt small. She had felt small her entire life, but never quite like this. First time seeing the real thing? Park Hyun asked from the seat beside her. He was taller than Minji, broader in the shoulders, but his hands shook slightly as he gripped the armrest. They had grown up together on the colony world, two kids who fixed broken machines in the outer settlements. Now they were here, at the center of galactic civilization, about to begin mandatory defense training. "It's bigger than the video showed," Minji said quietly. Around them, the other human trainees gathered their bags in silence. Nobody seemed excited. The combat arena was where every species in the Galactic Council sent their people to learn how to fight, how to survive in a universe that was not always friendly. For most species, it was an honor. For humans, it felt like a reminder of what they were not. The shuttle door opened with a hiss. Heat and noise flooded in. Minji grabbed her single bag and followed the others onto the platform. Immediately, she felt eyes on them. Not friendly eyes. Curious eyes, like people watching animals at a zoo. A massive creature waited at the end of the platform. It stood nearly 3 meters tall with a thick shell covering its body like armor. 6 legs supported its bulk, and 2 huge arms ended in claws that could probably crush steel. Its eyes were black and expressionless, mounted on a head that looked more like a helmet than flesh. "Humans," the creature said. Its voice was deep and rumbling. Translated through the small device clipped to its shell, "I am Thexcal, combat instructor of the Vrelnor species. For the next 6 months, I will teach you how to survive. Follow me." The group of 20 humans followed Thexcal through the arena's corridors. Everywhere Minji looked, she saw warriors. A group of reptilian Skoreth were wrestling in an open training pit, their scales gleaming under bright lights. Flying creatures she did not recognize swooped through the upper levels, their wings creating winds that made her stumble. A pack of 4-armed hacks walked past, each one carrying weapons that looked too heavy for 3 humans to lift. Nobody looked at the humans with respect. Some looked with curiosity. Most did not look at all. Thexcal led them to Training Hall 12, a large room with padded floors and walls covered in equipment Minji did not recognize. He turned to face them, his massive bulk making even Hyun look like a child. "Sit," Thexcal commanded. The humans sat. "I will be direct with you because your species values directness," the instructor began. "You are the weakest species in the Galactic Council. This is not an insult. This is fact. Your bodies break easily. You heal slowly. You have no natural armor, no claws, no venom, no strength beyond what your thin muscles provide. In close combat, you are prey." Minji felt her face grow hot, but she kept her expression neutral. Beside her, she heard Choi Do-yoon shift uncomfortably. Kang Yuna, sitting on her other side, stared straight ahead with blank eyes. "Every species has a role," Thexcal continued. "Humans are excellent with technology. You build good ships. You solve problems with your minds. This is valuable. But combat?" He made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You cannot survive by hand against true warriors. My advice to you is simple. Focus on weapon systems. Focus on ship-to-ship combat. Leave close quarters fighting to species that were built for it. Accept this and you will survive your time here." The room was silent. Minji could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. "Any questions?" Thexcal asked. Nobody raised their hand. What was there to ask? The instructor had made everything clear. Humans were weak. Humans should stay in their lane. Humans should accept their place. But something burned in Minji's chest. Something that felt like anger, but also like sadness, and also like a question that had no words yet. The rest of the day passed in a blur of orientation. They were shown to their quarters, given access codes, introduced to the arena's facilities. Everywhere they went, the message was the same. Humans were support staff, technicians, diplomats, not fighters. That evening, Minji could not sleep. She lay in her small bunk staring at the ceiling, thinking about Thexcal's words. "You cannot survive by hand. Accept this." But something about it felt wrong. Humans had survived for thousands of years on Earth, a planet that tried to kill them in 100 different ways. They had no claws to fight predators, no shells to protect them from the elements, no venom to kill their prey. Yet somehow, humans had become the dominant species on their world. How? Minji sat up and grabbed her datapad. The arena had a library system, a massive database containing information about every species in the council. She pulled up the entry for humanity and started reading. The basic facts were there. Earth, the homeworld, physical characteristics, average strength and speed compared to other species. It was all accurate. Humans were physically weaker than most sentient species. But then she found something interesting. There was a section labeled Historical Combat Systems, and when she opened it, she found almost nothing. A few brief mentions of ancient warfare, some notes about weapons development, but compared to other species whose entries contained detailed information about their natural fighting abilities and traditional combat methods, humanity's section was nearly empty. That seemed strange. Humans had fought wars for thousands of years. They must have developed ways to fight. Where was all that information? Minji dug deeper, following cross-references and archived links. Most led to dead ends, but finally, buried in a subcategory marked obsolete cultural practices, she found a list of names that made her pause. Taekwondo, karate, boxing, wrestling, judo, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Sambo, Krav Maga. The list went on. Dozens of names, hundreds. Each one linked to video files and text documents that described systems of combat developed by humans. Not systems that relied on claws or strength or armor. Systems that relied on technique, on leverage, on understanding how bodies moved and where they were weak. Minji opened a video file at random. It showed two humans in a training room, both wearing simple white uniforms. One was much larger than the other. They bowed to each other, then began to fight. Except it was not really fighting. It was like a dance. The smaller person moved around the larger one, using their opponent's strength against them. When the big person tried to grab them, the small person twisted and suddenly the big person was on the ground, their arm locked in a position that looked painful. The video ended with both people bowing again. Minji watched another video. Then another. She watched for 2 hours, her heart beating faster with each new technique she saw. These were humans. Small, weak humans with no claws or armor, but they had learned to fight anyway. They had studied the body, found its weak points, developed precise ways to exploit those weaknesses. They had turned their lack of natural weapons into an advantage, because it forced them to think, to learn, to become technical. Why had nobody taught this at the arena? Why did the Galactic database treat these systems as obsolete? Minji knew the answer even as she asked the question. Because humans had accepted the galaxy's judgment. They had decided they were weak, so they stopped learning how to be strong. They had forgotten these systems because everyone told them such systems were useless against real warriors. But what if everyone was wrong? Minji looked at her hands. They were small hands scarred from years of repair work. Not strong hands. Not hands with claws, just human hands with 5 fingers and fragile bones. But in those videos, she had seen what human hands could do. They could strike pressure points. They could lock joints. They could choke, twist, break. She cracked her knuckles, a nervous habit she had developed as a child. The sound was sharp in the quiet room. Tomorrow she would talk to the arena coordinator. She would request access to the advanced training areas. She would start learning what humans had forgotten. Thexacal had said humans could not survive by hand. Minji was going to prove him wrong. The arena coordinator's office was on the 47th floor, surrounded by windows that looked out over training platforms where aliens practiced combat in every form imaginable. Minji stood in front of the coordinator's desk, trying not to feel intimidated by the creature behind it. Velis was a Sithrak, a species that looked like enormous snakes with arms. Her scales were deep blue and black, and when she moved, her body created smooth patterns that made Minji's eyes hurt if she watched too long. The coordinator was currently coiled behind her desk, examining a data pad with yellow eyes that had no pupils. "Let me understand your request," Velis said, her voice soft and hissing. "You want access to Training Zone 7, the zero-gravity combat chamber." "Yes," Minji said. Her mouth was dry, but she kept her voice steady. "That zone is reserved for apex species, predators who fight in 3 dimensions. Why would a human need such a facility?" Minji had prepared for this question. "I want to study movement in unrestricted space, to understand combat from different angles. It will help me with ship-based defensive operations. This was not entirely a lie, but it was not the whole truth either. Velis studied her for a long moment. Then she made a sound that might have been laughter. Very well. Your curiosity is entertaining. You may use Zone 7 during off-peak hours. Try not to hurt yourself, little human. Medical treatment is expensive. Minji bowed slightly and left before the coordinator could change her mind. Training Zone 7 was located in the lower levels of the arena, accessible through a series of corridors that grew darker and colder as Minji walked. The door was marked with warning symbols in 12 different languages. She pressed her newly granted access code into the panel and stepped inside. The chamber was a perfect sphere, 15 meters in diameter with soft padding covering every surface. Lights embedded in the walls created a gentle glow that eliminated shadows. In the center, a gravity generator hummed quietly, ready to be adjusted to any setting from 0 to 3 times standard. Minji was not alone for long. Park Hyun found her there 2 hours later, watching old videos on her datapad and trying to understand the movements she saw. I asked around, Hyun said, floating gently in the zero gravity. Nobody could tell me where you disappeared to. Then I checked your access logs. What are you doing down here, Minji? She showed him the video she was watching. 2 humans, both from old Earth, demonstrating something called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. One person was on their back, the other trying to attack from above. The person on the bottom used their legs to control their opponent, then twisted their hips and suddenly reversed their positions. I am learning how humans used to fight, Minji said. Before we decided we were too weak. Hyun watched the video in silence. Then he pushed himself over to the wall and activated the gravity. They both dropped gently to the floor as weight returned to their bodies. Show me, he said. That was how it started. 2 humans in a training chamber designed for aliens, trying to recreate fighting systems that their species had almost forgotten. They worked slowly, carefully, trying to understand not just the movements but the principles behind them. The first thing Minji learned was that human martial arts were not about strength. They were about leverage, timing, and understanding how joints moved. A small person could throw a large person if they used the right angle. A weak grip could become a strong control if applied to the correct pressure point. They practiced falling first, learning to land without injury. This was harder than it looked. Their bodies wanted to tense up to resist the impact, but the old videos showed a different way. Relax. Spread the impact across as much surface as possible. Turn falling into rolling and rolling into returning to your feet. After a week, Choi Do-yoon and Kang Yuna joined them. Do-yoon had been a dancer before joining the defense program, and he understood movement in a way that helped everyone learn faster. Yuna was the strongest among them, not by galactic standards but by human ones, and she helped them understand how to generate power from the hips and legs rather than just the arms. More humans came. They trained in secret during off-peak hours, when most of the arena was focused on other zones. They studied the anatomy files available in the medical database, learning about alien physiology. Every species had joints. Every species had pressure points. Every species had vulnerable areas. The Vrelnor, like Thexcal, had thick armor but soft membranes at the joints. The Skorath were powerful constrictors, but their heads were vulnerable and their complex spines had specific points where pressure caused muscular spasms. The Hacks had 4 arms, which seemed like an advantage until you realized it meant 4 shoulders that could be dislocated. Minji began to see patterns. The galaxy species had evolved natural weapons, so they fought in natural ways. They used their strength, their claws, their built-in advantages. But they had never needed to become technical. They had never needed to study their own bodies and their opponents' bodies with the precision that humans had developed. Humans were weak, yes, but weakness had made them smart. It had made them careful. It had made them study every tiny advantage they could find. After a month, they had developed the basics of a system. They called it Saramsul, which meant human art in Korean. It combined elements from every martial art they could find in the archives, striking from Taekwondo and Muay Thai, grappling from Judo and wrestling, ground fighting from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, pressure points from traditional martial arts whose names had been lost to time. But most importantly, they adapted everything for combat against non-human opponents. They practiced on simulation dummies that mimicked alien body structures. They drilled responses to attacks that humans would never naturally make, because they were designed for claws or tails or tentacles. The training chamber became sacred space. Every evening, 8 humans would gather there, practicing until their bodies ached and their minds could barely focus. They conditioned their hands, building calluses and pain tolerance. They strengthened their cores, because human flexibility was an advantage they needed to maximize. They ran endurance drills because most alien species were built for short bursts of power, while humans could maintain steady output for hours. Minji felt herself changing. Her body grew harder, more capable. Her mind became sharper, constantly analyzing movement and distance. She started to see the world in terms of angles and leverage points. Every person she passed in the arena corridors, she unconsciously cataloged their vulnerabilities. But more than her body or mind, her confidence changed. She stopped feeling small. She started feeling dangerous. That was when Thexcal found them. It was the middle of the night cycle, and the group was drilling throws. Hyun was working with Yuna, trying to execute a technique that used the opponent's forward momentum to lift them despite the weight difference. They were so focused that nobody noticed the large shape in the observation window above the training floor. Minji saw him first. She looked up and there was Thexcal, his black eyes watching through the transparent wall. For a moment their eyes met. Then the instructor disappeared. "We need to stop," Doyun said nervously. "If he reports us, let him come," Minji said. She did not know where the words came from, but they felt right. Let him see what we have learned. They did not have to wait long. 5 minutes later, the chamber door opened and Thexcal entered. He moved slowly onto the training floor, his clawed feet clicking against the padding. The 8 humans stopped their practice and turned to face him. "So," the Vrelnor said, "humans playing at being warriors." "We are not playing," Minji said. She stepped forward, separating herself from the group. "We are training. Training in techniques that will not work against real combat species. I have seen your movements. They are interesting, I admit. But interesting is not effective." Minji felt her heart pounding, but her voice came out calm. "Then let us test that. Spar with me." The other humans made sounds of protest. Thexcal was enormous, armored, and had trained for decades. Minji was small even for a human. It would be a massacre. But Thexcal tilted his head, considering. "You challenge me?" "I do. If I accept, I will hurt you. My people do not pull our strikes." "I understand." Something passed across the Vrelnor's face. Respect, maybe. Or just curiosity. "Very well. Standard arena rules. The match ends with submission or unconsciousness. I will try not to kill you, small human." They moved to the center of the chamber. Hyun activated the recording system without being asked. Whatever happened here, it needed to be documented. Minji faced Thexcal and bowed, a gesture from old Earth martial arts. The instructor did not return the bow. He simply waited, his massive form perfectly still. Then the Vrelnor attacked. He was fast, much faster than something his size should be. A clawed hand swept toward Minji's head with enough force to crack her skull. But Minji was not there. She had moved before the strike completed, circling to Thexcal's side. She struck at the membrane between his shell plates. Not hard enough to damage, but hard enough to make him notice. Thexcal pivoted, his other arm coming around in a backhand that would have broken Minji's ribs. She dropped under it, staying low, and struck again at his nearest leg joint. This time her knuckles hit the soft spot perfectly and the leg buckled slightly. The Vrelnor backed away, reassessing. This was not going as he expected. They circled each other. Thexcal tried different approaches. Direct charges that Minji evaded. Grappling attempts that she slipped away from. Every time he committed to an attack, she was somewhere else, and her counter-strikes always found the vulnerable spots. But Minji was tiring. Thexcal barely seemed winded. She needed to end this soon. The Vrelnor charged again, both arms extended to catch her in an inescapable grip. This time Minji did not evade. She stepped into the charge, inside his reach where his long arms could not grab effectively. She struck his eye stalks, forcing his head back. Then she moved behind him in one smooth motion, jumped onto his shell and wrapped her arm around his thick neck. It was not a choke, not exactly. She could not cut off his breathing with pressure alone. But she had studied Vrelnor anatomy. She knew where the major arteries ran. She applied pressure with her forearm against those arteries while her other hand grabbed her first wrist, creating a frame that locked the position. Thexcal tried to throw her off. He spun, reached back, even tried to fall backward to crush her, but Minji held on with her legs hooked inside his, her entire body rigid with effort. Seconds passed, 10, 20, 30. The Vrelnor's movement slowed. His hands reaching for her began to drop. He tapped 3 times against her arm. Minji released immediately and dropped to the floor. Thexikal staggered forward a few steps, then caught himself. For a long moment, the chamber was silent except for Minji's heavy breathing. Then Thexikal turned to face her. "What?" he said slowly. "Was that?" Minji straightened up, her legs shaking from exhaustion. That was what humans can do when we remember how to fight. News traveled fast in the galactic combat arena. By the next morning, everyone knew that a human had defeated Thexikal in a sparring match. The story grew with each telling. Some versions had Minji breaking the Vrelnor's shell. Others claimed she had knocked him unconscious. None of the stories were quite accurate, but they all agreed on one thing: a human had won. Minji woke to find her access code unlocking doors that had been closed to her before. The training zones marked for advanced students, the combat simulation rooms, even the instructor cafeteria where senior combat teachers gathered between sessions. She walked through the arena corridors and felt the change in how aliens looked at her, not with respect, not yet, but with interest. With uncertainty, she did not like the attention. She wanted to train, to continue developing Saram Sul with her group, but the attention found her anyway. First came the challenges. A Skorath instructor named Ravketh requested a demonstration match. He was a constriction specialist, famous for ending fights in seconds by wrapping around opponents and crushing them. Minji studied his species' anatomy for 2 days, then accepted. The match took place in Training Hall 3, with over 200 aliens watching. Ravketh was confident, his long reptilian body coiling and uncoiling as he prepared. When the match started, he struck like lightning, his body wrapping around Minji's waist before she could fully evade. But Minji had prepared for this. As the Skorath tightened his coils, she struck at specific points along his spine, targeting nerve clusters she had identified in the medical database. The first strike made his muscles spasm. The second made his grip loosen. Before he could adjust, she had slipped free and delivered a precise strike to the back of his head, stunning him long enough to apply a chokehold adapted for reptilian anatomy. Ravketh tapped out. The crowd was silent. 2 days later, a Clevex instructor challenged her, then a Hax warrior, then a Mintar philosopher who specialized in grappling. Minji won every match. Not easily. Each one pushed her to her limits and taught her something new. But she won. The human training group exploded in size. 50 humans joined, then 100. They needed larger spaces, more training time. The arena coordinator, Velis, granted them access to Hall 12 during peak hours. She did not say why. But Minji suspected the coordinator was enjoying the chaos this caused among the other species. Minji began teaching formally, breaking down techniques and principles for the growing group. Park Hyun handled the physical conditioning programs. Kang Yuna taught striking combinations. Choi Doyen documented everything, creating a database of techniques that any human could access. For the first time in the 3 centuries since humans had joined the Galactic Council, they were being noticed as fighters. Not everyone was happy about this. Commander Tak Jiwon arrived at the arena on a gray morning, 4 weeks after Minji's defeat of Thexikal. He was the highest-ranking human in the Galactic Defense Force, a man in his 60s with gray hair and a face that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. Minji received the summons to his temporary office with a sense of dread. The commander's office was sparse. A desk, 2 chairs, and a window showing the training platforms outside. Ji-won sat behind the desk, his uniform perfectly pressed, his expression unreadable. "Sit," he said. Minji sat. "You have caused quite a disruption, Lee Minji," Ji-won began. "The Galactic Combat Federation has contacted me 3 times in the past week. They are concerned about your activities, my training, your challenges to the established order." Ji-won leaned forward. "Humanity has a place in the galactic community. We are valued for our technical skills, our diplomatic abilities, our problem-solving. We have survived by being useful in ways that do not threaten other species. Do you understand what I am saying? You are saying we survive by staying weak. I am saying we survive by being smart about our limitations." Ji-won's voice hardened. "You are drawing attention to us in ways that could be dangerous. There are species on the Council who barely tolerate human presence. If we start challenging their dominance in combat, their specialty, we risk making enemies." Minji met his eyes. "With respect, Commander, they already see us as lesser. At least now they see us as capable of defending ourselves. They see you as a curiosity, an anomaly. That is not the same as respect. Jiwon stood and walked to the window. I fought in the first contact wars, Minji. I was there when humanity realized how small we were in the galaxy. Do you know how we survived? By accepting our place, by not making waves, by being valuable in ways that did not threaten the predator species. That sounds like fear, not wisdom. Jiwon turned sharply. It is both. And it has kept humanity alive. Before Minji could respond, an alert flashed on Jiwon's desk display. The commander pressed a button and a holographic projection appeared in the air between them. It showed an official announcement from the Galactic Combat Federation. The announcement was about the decennial tournament, a massive competition held every 10 years where species sent champions to compete in various combat categories. The tournament was a huge event, broadcast across the entire galaxy with political and economic consequences for the winning species. This year, the Federation was adding a new category: open-hand combat. No weapons, no armor, pure martial skill, and humanity had been specifically invited to send a champion. Minji read the announcement twice. This is about me, obviously, Jiwon said. The Vrelnor proposed this category. They want to prove that your victories were flukes. They want to humiliate humanity on the largest possible stage, or we could win. You cannot win. Jiwon shut off the display. The Vrelnor champion is Thexmar, Thexcal's clutch brother. He has not lost a fight in 43 matches. He has killed 12 opponents in the ring. The other likely competitors include Ravketh, who you barely beat in a demonstration match, and Zil, a Klevex speedster who is the fastest hand-to-hand fighter in 3 sectors. Then I will need to train harder. Lee Minji. Jiwon's voice was tired now. I am ordering you not to accept this challenge. Let the Federation select someone else, or let us decline politely. But do not throw away your life for pride. Minji stood. Permission to speak freely, Commander? Jiwon nodded. You said humanity survived by accepting our place. But what kind of survival is that? We live in the galaxy's shadow, grateful for scraps of respect, always afraid of making anyone uncomfortable. I have watched humans apologize for taking up space their entire lives. Maybe it is time we stopped apologizing. That is a very young perspective. Maybe, but I am going to accept the challenge. Minji moved toward the door. You can order me not to, but the Federation's invitation was public. If I decline, every human in the galaxy will know it was because our leadership was afraid. She left before Jiwon could respond. The acceptance process was simple. Minji submitted her registration to the Federation that evening. By the next morning it was official. Lee Minji, human, would compete in the open-hand combat category of the decennial tournament. The response was immediate. Human communities across the galaxy erupted with reactions. Some were excited, seeing this as humanity's chance to prove themselves. Others were terrified, certain that Minji would be killed and humanity would be humiliated. The betting markets opened within hours with odds of 10,000 to 1 against Minji winning the tournament. Park Hyun found Minji in Training Zone 7 that night. She was working through forms, drilling movements until they became automatic. He watched for a while before speaking. Jiwon is right, you know, Hyun said. This could be a disaster. I know. You could die. I know that too. Hyun stepped onto the training floor. Then why do it? Minji stopped moving and turned to face her oldest friend. Do you remember when we were kids on New Busan? You were being bullied by those older boys. You were bigger than me, stronger than me, but you would not fight back because you were afraid of making things worse. I remember. I fought them for you. I lost, obviously. They beat me badly enough that I spent 2 days in medical. But you know what happened after that? They stopped bothering you. Because even though I lost, I proved we would not just accept it. I proved that hurting us had a cost. That is what this is about? Sending a message? No, Minji shook her head. It is about changing the message we send ourselves. Every human watching this will see one of their own step into the ring with the galaxy's best warriors. Win or lose, that matters. It tells us we are not weak. We just forgot how to be strong. Hyun was quiet for a moment. Then he cracked his knuckles, a habit he had picked up from Minji. Then we had better make sure you win. 3 months to prepare. We need a training plan. We need more than that. Minji pulled up her datapad and showed him a list of names. These are the likely competitors based on the tournament rules. I need to study all of them. Their fighting styles, their physiology, their weaknesses. And I need to drill counters until I can execute them exhausted and injured. That is not enough time. It has to be enough. Minji looked at the list of names, each one representing a warrior from a species designed to fight. Because in 3 months I'm going to step into that ring. And I am going to show the galaxy what humans can do. Hyun stared at his friend at the determination in her eyes. Then he smiled. All right, let us get to work. For 3 months Minji did nothing but train. She studied her opponents obsessively, watching every available recording of their fights. She drilled techniques thousands of times until her body moved before her mind could think. She sparred with every volunteer, human and alien, who was willing to help her prepare. The human community rallied behind her. Donations poured in to fund her training. Engineers designed custom equipment. Medical specialists ensured her body could handle the punishment. Messages arrived from human colonies she had never heard of, from children who were learning Saramsul, from soldiers who had begun teaching it to their units. Minji carried that weight. Every day she felt the pressure of representation. She was not just fighting for herself. She was fighting for every human who had ever been told they were too weak, too fragile, too soft for combat. The night before the tournament, Minji sat alone in Training Zone 7. Her body was ready. Her techniques were sharp. But her mind was full of doubt. What if Jiwon was right? What if she lost? What if she made things worse for humanity? The door opened. Thexcal entered, moving quietly for something his size. Cannot sleep? The Vrelnor asked. Too much thinking. Thexcal sat beside her, his shell scraping against the floor. My clutch brother will not hold back. He sees your challenge as an insult to our species. I know. Can you win? Minji looked at her hands, small, scarred, human. I do not know, but I have to try. That is warrior thinking, Thexcal said. You have already changed, human. Win or lose tomorrow, remember that. He stood and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned back. I will be watching. Do not disappoint me. Then he was gone, and Minji was alone with her thoughts and her fear and her determination. Tomorrow, the galaxy would watch. Tomorrow, she would step into the ring. Tomorrow, she would prove that humans could survive by hand, or die trying. The training schedule began at 4 in the morning, standard station time. Minji woke in darkness, her body aching from the previous day's work, and forced herself out of bed. There was no time for rest. 3 months to prepare for the decennial tournament was not nearly enough. Park Hyun was already in Training Zone 7 when she arrived, setting up equipment. He had become her primary training partner, the person who pushed her hardest because he understood what was at stake. He looked up when she entered and nodded without speaking. Words were not necessary anymore. They began with conditioning. Minji's hands, already calloused from years of maintenance work, needed to become even harder. She struck the training posts again and again, building tolerance to pain and impact. Her knuckles bled sometimes, but Kang Yuna had taught her how to wrap them properly, how to let them heal without losing training time. After hands came footwork. Humans were bipedal, which gave them advantages that most alien species did not have. They could move in ways that four-legged or serpentine species could not match. Minji drilled pivots, angles of attack, evasion patterns. Every movement had to be perfect because she would not get second chances in the tournament. By 6 in the morning, other humans started arriving. The group had grown to over 200 now, all training in Saramsul, all hoping to see their species prove itself. They watched Minji train, learning from her mistakes and successes. Some days she felt like an inspiration. Other days she felt like a fraud, knowing how much she still had to learn. At 7, an unexpected visitor arrived. His name was Chinlor, and he was a Mintar philosopher who had lived for over 300 years. The Mintar were a strange species, humanoid but with skin that changed colors with their moods and large eyes that saw in spectrums humans could not perceive. Chinlor moved slowly, using a walking stick, but his mind was sharp. I have studied your techniques, Chinlor said in heavily accented standard. They are interesting. I wish to help, Minji was cautious. Why would you help a human? Because I am curious about what happens when prey species stop thinking like prey. Also, I have no love for the Vrelnor. They destroyed my homeworld's greatest library in the sector wars. I would enjoy seeing them humbled. The old Mintar's skin flickered orange. which Minji had learned meant amusement. Practical reasons, you see, not noble ones. Chinler became invaluable. He had studied alien anatomy for centuries and knew things that were not in any database. He taught Minji about nerve clusters specific to each species, about psychological weaknesses and combat patterns. The Vrelnor always protected their heads but exposed their joints. The Skorath were arrogant and could be baited into mistakes. The Klevex were fast but had poor endurance compared to humans. Every strength is a weakness if you approach it correctly, Chinlord told her. The Vrelnor are strong, so they rely on strength. Beat them with technique. The Klevex are fast, so they rely on speed. Beat them with endurance. You humans are weak, so you learn to be smart. That is your advantage. The training intensified as weeks passed. Minji sparred with everyone who volunteered. Humans, mostly. But also a few aliens who were curious or supportive. A young Hax warrior named Roxville began training with them, fascinated by the idea that technique could overcome natural advantages. He let Minji practice against his forearms, learning how to track multiple limbs and find openings in complex attack patterns. Choi Doyun managed the documentation, recording every session and creating a database of techniques. He also monitored Minji's health, making sure she was not overtraining. You need to be at peak condition for the tournament, he reminded her constantly. That means rest days. Minji hated rest days. Every hour not training felt like wasted time. But Doyen was right. Her body needed recovery to get stronger. On rest days, she studied instead. She watched recordings of her likely opponents, analyzing their patterns, looking for habits and weaknesses. Thexmar, the Vrelnor champion, was her most likely final opponent if she survived that far. He fought like his clutch brother Thexcal, but with more aggression and less control. He had killed 12 opponents in the ring, not through malice but through sheer overwhelming power. His shell was thicker than most Vrelnor, making strikes to his body almost useless. But Minji noticed that he favored his right side, protecting an old injury to his left shoulder joint. That was a weakness, small but real. Ravketh, the Skorath she had beaten before, would likely be in the tournament. He was faster now, having trained specifically to counter human techniques after their first match. He had learned to protect his nerve clusters and strike from unpredictable angles. Fighting him again would be dangerous. Shill, the Klevex speedster, was the opponent that worried Minji most. The Klevex were insectoid with reaction times twice as fast as humans. Zil could throw 5 strikes in the time it took Minji to throw 2. The only way to beat him was to make him come to her, to fight defensively and wait for him to tire. But that required patience and perfect technique. One mistake would end the fight. As the weeks passed, something changed in Minji. Her body transformed, becoming leaner and harder. Her movements grew more efficient. But the real change was mental. She stopped seeing herself as human fighting aliens. She started seeing herself as a warrior, period. Her species did not matter. Her size did not matter. Only her skill and determination mattered. Messages arrived from across the galaxy. Human children sent drawings of her fighting. Soldiers sent videos of their units training in Saramsul. Civilians sent stories about how her challenge had changed the way they saw themselves. The pressure of representation should have crushed her, but instead it became fuel. She was carrying humanity's hope, yes, but she was also giving humans permission to be dangerous. 1 month before the tournament, Commander Tak Ji-won visited again. This time he watched her train in silence for an hour before speaking. When the session ended, he approached her. "You have improved," he said simply. "Thank you, Commander. I still think this is a mistake, but I understand why you are doing it." Ji-won handed her a data chip. "This contains tactical analysis from Defense Force intelligence. Information about your likely opponents that is not publicly available. Use it." Minji took the chip, surprised. "I thought you wanted me to decline." "I did. But you are going to fight whether I approve or not, so you might as well have every advantage." Ji-won turned to leave, then paused. "The Defense Force is watching, Lee. All of humanity is watching. No pressure." He left before she could respond. The final month of training was the hardest. Minji pushed herself beyond what she thought possible. She sparred until she could barely stand. She drilled techniques in her sleep. She studied her opponents until she could predict their movements before they made them. Park Hyun matched her intensity, pushing himself to give her the best training possible. During one session, Minji accidentally broke 2 of his ribs with a poorly controlled strike. She wanted to stop to let him heal, but Hyun refused. "This is what the tournament will be like," he said through gritted teeth. "You will get hurt. Your opponents will get hurt. You need to learn to fight through it." So they kept training, both of them battered and exhausted, both of them driven by something beyond reason. Kang Yuna handled Minji's strength and conditioning with scientific precision. She designed programs that maximized human potential without risking injury. She taught Minji how to generate explosive power from her hips and legs, how to make every strike count despite her size. "You will never be as strong as a Vrelnor," Yuna said, "but you can be strong enough if you use your strength perfectly." 2 weeks before the tournament, Minji fought a practice match against a simulation of Thexmar. The arena's combat simulators were sophisticated, using holographic projections and force fields to create realistic opponents. The simulation fought exactly like the real Thexmar. With his patterns and habits and terrifying power, Minji lost. Badly. The simulated Thexmar caught her with a strike that would have shattered her ribcage if it had been real. She spent the rest of the day in medical, being treated for bruises from the force fields. That night, lying in her bunk, Minji felt doubt creep in. What if she was not good enough? What if all this training was not enough? What if she died in the ring and made things worse for humanity? But then she thought about the children who were learning Saramsul, about the soldiers who were training in human martial arts, about every human who had decided to stop apologizing for being weak and start learning to be strong. If she quit now, what message would that send? She got up and went back to the training zone. Park Hyun was there, like he always was when she needed him. "Cannot sleep?" he asked. "I lost to the simulation today." "I know. I watched. What if I lose in the real tournament?" Hyun was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You probably will lose some matches. The tournament has multiple rounds. You do not need to be perfect. You just need to be good enough to keep advancing until you face Thexmar in the finals, and then you need to be better than you have ever been." That is not comforting. It is not meant to be comforting. It is meant to be honest. Hyun stood and moved to the center of the training floor. "Come on, let us drill the Thexmar counters again. We have 2 weeks to make you faster." They trained through the night. By morning, Minji had refined her approach to fighting the Vrelnor champion. She would not try to match his strength. She would make him chase her, exhaust him, and wait for the perfect moment to exploit his left shoulder weakness. It was a dangerous plan. It required perfect execution. But it was her best chance. The final week arrived. The arena was filling with visitors from across the galaxy. Ships arrived daily, bringing spectators and delegates. The tournament was a huge event, with political and economic consequences for the winning species. Betting markets were going crazy. Minji's odds had improved slightly, down to 5,000 to 1, but everyone still expected her to lose in the first or second round. Commander Jiwon held a meeting with all human personnel at the arena. He stood before them in his dress uniform and spoke clearly. "In 3 days, the decennial tournament begins. Lee Minji will represent humanity in the open-hand combat category. I want to be clear about something. Win or lose, she has already accomplished something remarkable. She has reminded us that humans are not just technicians and diplomats. We are survivors. We are fighters when we need to be. Regardless of the outcome, I am proud of what she represents." The humans in the room erupted in applause. Minji sat in the back, feeling the weight of their support and expectations. That night, she could not sleep again. She sat in Training Zone 7, watching old videos of Earth martial artists, men and women from centuries ago who had refined these techniques. She wondered what they would think of her, using their arts to fight aliens in space. The door opened. Thexcal entered, moving quietly. "Tomorrow is the tournament," the Vrelnor said. "Yes. Are you ready?" Minji thought about the question. Was she ready? She was as prepared as 3 months could make her. Her techniques were sharp. Her body was conditioned. Her mind was focused. But ready? Could anyone ever truly be ready to fight for their species' honor against the galaxy's best warriors? "I have to be," she said finally. Thexcal sat beside her. "My clutch brother is a great warrior. He will try to kill you, not from hatred, but because that is how he fights. With full commitment, I know. But I have watched you train. You have learned what my people never needed to learn. You have studied weakness and vulnerability. You have made technique into a weapon stronger than claws or shells." The Vrelnor's voice was thoughtful. "You might actually win. You sound surprised." "I am. When you first challenged me, I thought you were foolish. Now I think you might be the most dangerous fighter in this tournament, because you are the only one who had to become dangerous. The rest of us were born that way." Minji looked at her hands, scarred, calloused, still small, but capable of so much more than she had ever imagined. "Thank you, Thexcal. Do not thank me yet. Wait until after the tournament." He stood to leave. "And Li Minji? Show them what humans can do." Then she was alone again with her thoughts and her training and the weight of humanity's hopes. The tournament began tomorrow. Ready or not, it was time to fight. The Galactic Combat Arena had never been so full. Hundreds of thousands of aliens packed the viewing platforms with billions more watching from across the galaxy. The decennial tournament was the biggest combat event in known space, and this year's open-hand combat category had drawn special attention because of one small human who had dared to challenge the natural order. Minji stood in the preparation room, wearing the simple combat uniform that all competitors received. White cloth that would not restrict movement or give any competitor an advantage. She was alone as the rules required before matches. She closed her eyes and focused on her breathing, running through techniques in her mind. The door chimed. Time to go. The walk to the combat ring felt endless. Corridors filled with aliens who stared at her with curiosity or amusement. She was so small compared to most of them, so fragile looking. The betting market still had her at terrible odds, even after her training videos had leaked and gone viral across human networks. The combat ring was a circular platform 30 meters across, surrounded by energy barriers that would keep fighters inside and spectators safe. The surface was padded but firm, designed to work for species with different body types. Above the ring, holographic displays showed the tournament bracket and competitor information. Minji's first opponent was a Mintar named Kelvex. He was half again her size, with the color-changing skin and strange proportions of his species. Mintar were not considered elite fighters, but Kelvex had a reputation as a skilled grappler. He had won his preliminary matches through patience and technique. They entered the ring from opposite sides. The referee, a neutral Altarian with too many eyes, explained the rules in 3 languages. Fight until submission, unconsciousness, or death. No weapons. No leaving the ring. Judges would score the match if neither fighter could continue. Minji bowed to her opponent, an earth gesture that many aliens did not understand. Kelvex tilted his head, confused, but returned the gesture. The bell rang. Kelvex moved cautiously, his skin shifting to a defensive blue color. He was testing her, trying to understand how a human fought. Minji circled, watching his footwork, analyzing his balance. When he reached for a grip, she was not there. When he tried to close distance, she maintained space. They circled for 30 seconds without contact, a chess match before the real fight began. Then Minji attacked. A low kick to Kelvex's lead leg, targeting the nerve cluster Chinlor had taught her about. The Mintar's leg buckled. As he adjusted his weight, Minji shot in for a takedown using his forward momentum to throw him. They hit the mat together, but Minji had position. She moved to his back, wrapped her arm around his neck, and applied the choke she had drilled thousands of times. Kelvex tried to escape, his skin flashing red with alarm, but Minji's technique was perfect. After 15 seconds, the Mintar tapped out. The crowd made a sound that was not quite a cheer. Surprise, maybe. The human had won her first match, but it was only the first round. 64 fighters had entered the tournament. Now there were 32. Minji's second opponent was a Hax warrior named Torvex. He had 4 arms, each as thick as Minji's leg, and he moved with the confidence of someone who had never lost a fair fight. The match began, and Torvex attacked immediately, all 4 arms striking from different angles. It was overwhelming, impossible to block everything. But Minji did not try to block everything. She focused on the pattern: top right, bottom left, top left, bottom right. Once she saw the pattern, she could slip between the strikes. She targeted his joints, his elbows and shoulders, striking them again and again until his attacks slowed. When he overcommitted to a grab with his upper arms, she dropped low and swept his legs. The big warrior crashed to the mat, and before he could recover, Minji had locked one of his arms and was applying pressure to the elbow. Torvex roared in pain and tapped out. The crowd was louder now. The human had won again, 3rd round. The bracket was down to 16 fighters. Minji's opponent was Ravketh, the Skorath instructor she had beaten months ago in a demonstration match. He had trained specifically for this rematch, and it showed immediately. He was faster, more careful with his nerve clusters, striking from angles that were harder to counter. The match was brutal. Ravketh caught Minji with his tail, bruising her ribs. She responded by targeting his eyes, forcing him to be defensive. They grappled, broke apart, struck, grappled again. It was a battle of technique versus improved technique, and Minji was not sure she was winning. In the second round, Ravketh managed to wrap around her waist. His coils tightened, crushing the air from her lungs. Minji felt panic rising but pushed it down. She remembered her training. She located his spine with her hands, found the nerve clusters, and struck them repeatedly. The Skorath's grip loosened. She slipped free, gasping, and immediately went on the offensive. The match ended in the third round when Minji caught Ravketh in a modified choke that worked on reptilian anatomy. He held out for almost a minute before tapping. When they separated, the Skorath looked at her with respect. "You have improved, human," he said. "Go far in this tournament." The crowd was cheering now. Not just the human sections. Other aliens were starting to appreciate the technical skill on display. Minji had advanced to the quarterfinals. 8 fighters remained. Her next opponent was Zil, the Klevex speedster. This was the fight Minji had been dreading. Shill entered the ring, moving so fast he seemed to flicker. The Klevex were insectoid, their nervous systems processing information at incredible speeds. When the match began, Minji barely saw his first 5 strikes. She felt them, though. Her face, her ribs, her legs, each impact precise and painful. Minji tried to counter, but he was gone before her strikes could land. She tried to grapple, but caught only air. Shill was everywhere and nowhere, his attacks coming from angles that seemed impossible. By the end of the first round, Minji was bleeding from cuts on her face and favoring her left leg. She returned to her corner where Park Hyun waited. "You cannot match his speed," Hyun said, working on her cuts. "Stop trying. Make him come to you. Use your endurance." The second round was more of the same. Zil attacked in bursts of incredible speed, then backed off to recover. Minji focused on defense, blocking what she could, absorbing what she could not block, never committing to attacks that would leave her exposed. It hurt. Every strike from the Klevex felt like being hit with metal rods. But she stayed standing. The third round was when Zil's speed finally began to drop. His attacks were still fast, but not quite as precise. His recovery time between bursts was longer. This was what Minji had been waiting for. Humans could maintain steady output for hours while most species operated in bursts. When Zil's next attack came, Minji did not try to evade completely. She accepted a strike to her shoulder in order to catch Zil's arm. She had him. The Klevex tried to pull free, but Minji's grip was iron. She swept his legs, dropped him to the mat, and moved to a dominant position. From there, it was technical work. She controlled his limbs, prevented him from using his speed advantage, and slowly moved to a choke position. Zil fought desperately, but his speed meant nothing when he could not move. He tapped out with 10 seconds left in the round. The crowd erupted. The human had made it to the semifinals. 4 fighters remained. Minji could barely walk back to the preparation room. Her ribs were cracked. Her face was swollen. Her left leg would not support her weight properly. The medical team worked on her for 2 hours, using the best alien medical technology to get her ready for the next match. They could heal some of the damage, but not all of it. She would fight hurt. The semifinal opponent was a Vrelnor named Kexthal, not as famous as Thexmar, but still deadly. The match was short and vicious. Kexthal tried to overwhelm Minji with power, but she had spent 3 months learning to fight Vrelnor. She targeted his joints, stayed mobile, made him chase her. When he was tired and frustrated, she caught him in the same technique she had used on Thexcal months ago. Chokehold targeting the arteries in his neck. He tapped out after 40 seconds. The finals were set. Lee Minji versus Thexmar. Minji had 4 hours to recover before the final match. She spent it in medical, letting them work on her body while she meditated and visualized the fight ahead. Commander Jiwon visited briefly, said nothing, just nodded with something that might have been pride. Park Hyun sat with her in silence, his presence comforting. Kang Yuna brought food that Minji could barely eat. Choi Doyen showed her messages from across the galaxy, humans celebrating her advancement, but she could not focus on them. Finally, it was time. The arena was louder than it had been for any previous match. This was what everyone had come to see. The human who had shocked the galaxy versus the Vrelnor champion who had never lost. Thexmar entered the ring to thunderous approval from the crowd. He was even bigger than his clutch brother Thexcal, his shell covered in ceremonial markings that represented his 43 victories. Minji entered to scattered applause from human sections and mostly silence from everyone else. She looked tiny compared to Thexmar. The betting markets had shifted but still heavily favored the Vrelnor. Nobody really believed a human could win. They faced each other across the ring. The referee gave the final instructions. The galaxy held its breath. The bell rang. Thexmar charged immediately, trying to end the fight with overwhelming force. Minji did not retreat. She stepped into his charge, using a hip throw to redirect his momentum. The massive Vrelnor crashed to the mat and the entire arena gasped. Nobody expected that. But Thexmar was not Thexcal. He was faster, more experienced, more dangerous. He rolled back to his feet and attacked again, this time more carefully. His strikes were measured, probing her defenses. When Minji tried to counter, he was ready, forcing her to evade instead. They exchanged techniques, his crushing power against her precision targeting. He caught her with a backhand that cracked ribs that were already damaged. She responded by striking the nerve cluster under his left arm, the one protecting his old injury. He roared and backed off. The first round ended with both fighters hurt, and neither having a clear advantage. Minji returned to her corner, spitting blood. Park Hyun worked on her frantically. "His left side," Minji gasped. "I need to keep hitting his left side. You are barely standing. Your ribs are broken. I know, but I can still fight." The second round was more brutal than the first. Thexmar adjusted his strategy, protecting his left side better, using his reach to keep Minji at distance. Every strike he landed hurt. Every breath Minji took felt like knives in her chest. But she kept moving, kept targeting his weakness, kept making him work. In the third round, they were both exhausted and in pain. Technique gave way to pure determination. Minji's left leg gave out when she tried a kick, and Thexmar caught her with a strike that should have ended the fight. She hit the mat hard, vision blurring. "Get up," she told herself. Get up, she got up. Thexmar charged one more time, committing everything to a final attack. Minji saw it coming. She had drilled for this exact moment thousands of times. She slipped inside his guard, drove her elbow into his throat, and as he reeled back, she jumped onto his back. This was it, the technique she had perfected. Her arms wrapped around his neck, targeting the arteries that fed his brain. Her legs hooked inside his, creating a body triangle that locked the position. She squeezed with everything she had left. Thexmar tried to throw her off. He reached back, trying to grab her. He tried to fall backward to crush her. But Minji held on, her entire body a vice, her technique perfect despite exhaustion and pain. 10 seconds, 20, 30. Thexmar's movements began to slow. His hand, reaching desperately for her face, started to fall. And then he tapped. 3 times against her forearm. The signal of submission. Minji released immediately and rolled off, collapsing onto the mat. For a moment, the entire arena was silent. Then the human sections exploded with sound. The noise spread, growing louder as the reality sank in across the galaxy. A human had won the open-hand combat championship. Minji struggled to her feet, using the ring ropes for support. Every part of her body hurt. Blood covered her face. She was pretty sure several bones were broken. But she was standing. Thexmar rose slowly, looking at her with his expressionless black eyes. Then the Vrelnor champion did something unprecedented. He bowed. Not a shallow gesture, but a deep bow of true respect. The kind his species reserved for the worthiest opponents. "You are warrior," he said in broken standard. "Human warrior." Minji returned the bow, tears streaming down her battered face. "We always were. We just had to remember." The referee raised her arm in victory. The crowd noise was deafening. Somewhere in the stands, Commander Jiwon was standing and applauding. Park Hyun had jumped over the barrier and was running toward her. The entire human delegation was cheering, but Minji was looking at her hands. These small human hands that everyone had said were not enough. These hands that had learned to fight anyway. These hands that had just won a tournament against the galaxy's best warriors. She cracked her knuckles one final time and smiled through the pain. 6 months later, Saramsul was being taught in human communities across the galaxy. The Galactic Combat Federation had officially recognized it as a legitimate martial system. Several alien species had requested human instructors, curious about these techniques developed by a species everyone had called weak. Minji stood in Training Hall 12 watching her students train, humans and aliens together, learning that strength came in many forms. Commander Jiwon had assigned her permanently to the arena, as head instructor of human combat systems. It was good work. Important work. Park Hyun approached, moving carefully because his ribs from their final training session still bothered him sometimes. New class starts next week. 50 more students. Mostly humans, but also some Mintar and even a few young Vrelnor. Vrelnor want to learn human techniques? Dexmar has been teaching Saram Sul to his clutch. He says any system that beat him is worth learning. Yun grinned. The galaxy is changing, Minji. Because of what you did. Because of what we did, Minji corrected. I just fought the matches. You made it possible. She walked onto the training floor, cracking her knuckles out of habit. Students looked up, ready to learn. Humans who wanted to be strong. Aliens who wanted to understand a different kind of strength. All of them ready to train. The galaxy had said humans could not survive by hand, that they were too weak, too fragile, too soft for real combat. They had said humans should accept their place and stop trying to be warriors. Li Minji had proved them wrong. One fight at a time, one technique at a time, one student at a time, and the galaxy would never look at humans the same way again.